this is one of my 2 puppers. Look at her.
Oh my gosh, what's their name?
This is Annie. Say hi. Annie is a
Awesome.
Portuguese Podengo who was rescued on the Azores and flown over to
Aw,
the mainland with a human buddy so I could adopt her.
so sweet.
Yeah, she's like a child. Anytime I'm doing anything on the computer or the phone, she wants to be right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, hola, y bienvenidos. Welcome to this episode of We're Moving to Europe, a podcast for Americans who are curious and or serious about relocating to a European country. I'm your host, Casey Kelly. My young adult children and I all moved from Texas to different countries in Europe over the past few years, and my hope now is to help other Americans who want to move to Europe to plan and execute their research effectively so you can find the right fit without stressing out, wasting money, or losing time. So today we're talking with Marisa Hoskins. She is the founder and CEO of Paws Abroad. That's an international travel planning community for people who are relocating with their pets. And Marisa is an experienced pet parent, an international traveler, and she started Paws Abroad to help take the stress out of cross-border pet relocation. So Marisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here.
I am so glad you could make time for this. So tell us a little bit about your background, like your pets, your travels with them, and how that led you to starting this business.
Absolutely. So I'm actually a 2 times founder in the pet space. So, my going back years ago, my whole life changed when I adopted my 2 dogs when I was living in Hong Kong in 2018. Kalinda, my miniature schnauzer, was a breeder dog at a puppy mill and had all these health problems, but fell in love with her anyways. Then Harley was, her best friend at the animal shelter. And so I went to get 1 dog and adopted 2. And so I moved back to, Canada in 2018. And that was my first foray into international pet travel. And it was an absolute nightmare. I hired a relocation company. It cost
Mm.
me thousands of dollars. I didn't even feel like they really liked animals, in all honesty. And I remember, relocating my whole life. That was like my biggest fear with something going wrong with the dogs. So I moved back and at the time kind of vowed never to do this again. As I mentioned, Kalinda had all these health problems. In a few months of cooking for her, she lost half her body weight. Never needed this $5,000 knee surgery. Three different vets told me she needed. And had kind of a really amazing weight loss transformation story. And she's now almost 14. But that led me to the start of my first company, which is called Puppy Gang Fresh Foods, which was a direct to consumer human grade dog food company. So I've been in the pet space now since 2019. And I was working for the company that acquired us for 2 years. I was really burnt out and tired after, scaling my first company, and I was daydreaming about moving abroad again. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't go through this again, can't put the dogs through that." But then finally I decided, you know what? It's been 6 years. I'm sure pet travel has changed, and decided that I was gonna move, to Thailand for a year after I exited out of the I was working for the group that acquired us for 2 years. And, I reached out to a company in the pet space, and, they gave me the wrong information. So they told me I could only fly in through Bangkok and not through Phuket, which actually, in speaking to people in Thailand, I found out that was a really common thing, and people would actually,
Oh my gosh.
take their dogs off in Bangkok and then drive 12 hours all the way to Phuket. And, I was deterred from using, an airline that I know and like, having lived in Asia for 8 years. And then I get a bill. This was the preliminary call for 1,300 Canadian dollars for consulting with the process after getting the wrong advice. And I said, "The hell with this. I'm gonna do it myself." I started, talking to different vets as well and realizing actually vets were experiencing the same problem. They didn't have visibility in this space either. They were relying on Marissa to go in and say, "Hey, I'm moving here. I need this, this, and this." So, people's options are so limited. There's no centralized platform for this data, for all these confusing import-export regulations that are constantly changing, or you're having to pay exorbitant amounts of fees for a relocation company, with no visibility into the process. Anyways, moved to Thailand with the dogs for the year, and, my brother and his girlfriend moved over as well. My brother is a software engineer and also my co-founder, my technical co-founder. So we decided to create the first community space basically for people traveling internationally with their pets. And we built proprietary technology. So our initial product that we launched is the pet travel planner. So we're live in 14 countries and it pulls in, allows you to enter information about your pet and your country of origin and your destination and pull in up-to-date import-export regulations, vaccination timelines, customized checklist, recommended airlines, and calendar and SMS integrations. And we've just launched a pet passport this past week, so individual pet profiles as well. We're building a community space for other people to connect via forum or DM that's going to be released in the next few weeks. And we also do concierge services, so personalized support with the planning and logistics of paperwork. So you actually have a human that will help guide you through the process. So it's not like working with this kind of faceless relocation company anymore. We've really built this really cool community so far. Our launch went viral May 1st on LinkedIn. We have over 115 paying users since May, 2,500 email subscribers, and 2,500 followers on our LinkedIn business page because this pain point, if you've moved internationally with your pets, has really resonated with people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And that's, yeah, when I first saw, I heard about your project on LinkedIn, and my first thought was, well, could I travel back in time and like redo my pet relocation? Because it was, um, it was a nightmare, even with tons of information available. And it was mostly through Facebook groups. But, it's kind of like playing telephone with the information. And there were a couple of times because I was moving with a rabbit in addition to a dog, I had to reach out directly to the Portuguese, like DGAV, like the state veterinary authority, and get a letter from them because rabbits are not part of the normal certification process. But since then, I've talked to a lot of Americans who would like to move to Europe or somewhere else. And what I was like, well, what's stopping you? And they're like, my pets. My pets are stopping me. And two things. One, a lot of people think that their animals will have to go into quarantine. And I'm not sure where that myth came from. Maybe it's from like a generation ago. I don't know. But a lot of people think that their pets will have to go into quarantine or that they will have to fly in cargo. And they have this image of them being just like in with a bunch of suitcases and stuff. So, can you talk a little bit about like what the process is actually like and how your platform guides people through it?
Absolutely. And I think you just highlighted a really important point. So our product and, our service and platform is resonating with people who are already traveling with their pets. But then there's this huge population of people that also want to travel with their pets, but have been deterred because there has been nothing quite like what we're doing before. And so, a few things. So there are, certain countries still do have quarantine. The process is a little different from country to country, but as long as you have the import-export, requirements of the country you are going to, um, there typically is not a quarantine process. There are exceptions to this, like, for example, Thailand is considered a high risk for rabies country, and certain countries like Hong Kong, don't allow you to go direct to Hong Kong from Thailand, but you can do an intermediary step there. The requirements vary from country to country, which is why our platform exists to kind of pull in this up in. Most countries, if you are going from the US to somewhere in Europe, for example, there is no quarantine. It's a very safe routes. You need to get, typically, a health certificate and have up-to-date vaccinations, particularly your rabies vaccination. Um, you often need export, paperwork. So as I mentioned We're moving to Portugal for the fall on Sunday, and so for example, in Canada, I'm going to our vet tomorrow to get our health certificate. I filled out our EU health certificate filled out by my vet, and then we have to go to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, in Canada to get that endorsed. You need to book your, pet's flight or seat on the plane, typically in advance, and people hear all these horror stories about cargo for pets. And obviously, the ideal is we move away from that and pets are allowed in cabin long term. But the process with traveling with your pets in cargo is a lot safer than people realize because you do hear these horror stories. So, over 4 million pets per year travel by air. So, it's actually quite a larger number than we realize. And the incident rate with cargo is actually less than 1%, so it's a very, very small percentage of things going wrong. And what I say to people, if you have a larger dogs and then that's a deterrent because you're terrified about, your pet going in cargo. The big thing is preparing in advance. So I typically recommend, and that's what I say to people who want to use our service. Don't wait till the bitter end. Sign up 3 to 6 months in advance so we can help you with the planning process to ensure there is no quarantine, there are no issues, all your paperwork's in order. Making sure that you select the right crate, making sure you acclimatize your dog to the crate and use
Yes.
positive
Mm.
reinforcement leading up to the travel and also prepping them for travel the day of. There are things that you can do to make this process a lot less painful and stressful for both yourself and your pet.
Yeah, and it does take planning. You can't leave it to the last minute. Apart from, I guess, knowing the paperwork and the requirements and the timing for all of the paperwork, are there any other issues that you've seen or that your clients and community members see that make international travel with pets especially challenging?
A big one is, not choosing the right carrier for your dog as well, and that's another thing that we work with pet parents. So different airlines have different requirements on sizing of carriers. So, my miniature Schnauzer Clinder goes in cabin. So it's important for me to know, for example, we're flying TAP Air, what are the, requirements of the actual it's not just weight requirements, it's like, does the size of my carrier actually adhere to their guidelines on board? Because you do hear of sometimes pets getting turned away because the carrier is not the right size.
Right.
These are also we have our travel planner, but as I mentioned, we do our personalized support as well, and these are all the types of things that we help pet parents think through, or people don't think to call the airline in advance and book, reserve their spot in cabin or in cargo, for their dog or cat or rabbit or other
Mhm.
animal, and
Yeah.
that's very important as well because airline limited, availability,
Yeah.
and there are some breed restrictions, so if you have a dog with breathing issues, like a pug, for example, certain airlines have certain restrictions on that, so these are all, considerations and things that we help people walk through so that they can find the best solution for their situation.
That's fantastic because it is really personalized. And I know that sometimes, from what I understand, my dog had a long snoot, so I didn't have to worry about it. But as I understand it, there are some times of year when certain airlines won't fly animals in cargo on certain routes because of the weather. Have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to plan in advance, and that's why, I think this conversation really highlights and that's what and a lot of people, like, love our travel planner because it gives them instant visibility in terms of what they need, but then oftentimes people do like to upgrade to concierge services because they still want that personalized support, and we actually and work with them as a really, either a trusted guide or actually do all of the booking for them, but they actually have peace of mind from a team that actually loves pets and wants them to feel, so you're not only paying for, hours, saving yourself hours of research and stress, but,
Mhm.
you do feel, it's such a worrisome thing. It's so personal traveling with your pet, and we really strive to provide that personalized support for people, and just to really be that trusted guide and give them peace of mind throughout this process and what is
Yeah.
already arguably a stressful time when you're moving.
Right. I mean, for me, it was like because I was moving by myself and I had my animals, I had to drive halfway across the US to our departure point with my critters. Um, and so I had to deal with like paperwork for myself, right? all of that, closing out everything, selling my car at the destination point, taking care of my animals. And it was just like, you think you've checked everything, but it would have been fantastic to have like another set of eyes on what I had been doing just to make sure. Cause I thought, man, if I drove all the way from Austin to Tampa and forgot something critical, I don't know what I'm going to do because the flight was already booked and paid for. Um, so let me ask you, we've been talking about like commercial flights, which is the way realistically almost everyone is going to travel with their pet. But there are other options. There's charter shares. I think there's one cruise line that does a transatlantic cruise if you're willing to wait like a year or two for a booking or plan really far in advance. Are those the only two other options that you found?
In Italy just actually announced, rules surrounding allowing your dogs in cabin with no weight restrictions. So this is really exciting because, we hope to see now more countries following suit. We do, because we give people options. We want to, make pet travel more accessible and, as you and I spoke about, personalized and kind of based on the individual situation. So we do have a strategic partnership. Say if, there were, a group of 10 Americans, for example, who knew they were moving to Portugal, we could work with our partner Fly Jet Pets to organize a flight over for a group and pay per seat. And obviously that's not always accessible and affordable for everyone, but that's why, our goal is to provide these different options based on people's situation, and make them feel peace of mind in the process and good with what they're doing, regardless.
Right. Are you interested in moving to Europe but don't know where to start? Or have you started trying to do research and are feeling overwhelmed? Our new membership space, the We're Moving to Europe community, offers you a curated learning area where you can explore your potential pathways to moving in a strategic and methodical way, get support from other Americans who are planning their own moves, document your research, make progress at your own pace, and get expert insights along the way. As a member, you'll have access to monthly Moving to Europe classes on fresh topics with new resources and get the tools you need to track your progress. You'll also find reliable, up-to-date information organized so you can find what you need when you need it. You'll get practical, supportive, respectful guidance, useful feedback, and input on future courses and resources. You'll also get access to We're Moving to Europe podcast episodes a week before the general public. We can't tell you where you should move, but our community will offer you a process, resources, and support to help you make that decision for yourself and your family. Search for We're Moving to Europe at school.com, that's SKOOL.com, or check the show notes of this episode for the link. Right. Okay, I had a couple of questions for people in my community because I was like, hey, I'm going to be talking to Marisa tomorrow, and several people in my group are planning a move and wondering what they're going to do with their pets. And Leanne asked how you plan for your pet's food when you're traveling, and I guess medication too. That was kind of a concern with me, but I will admit I did the charter share, so I had my critters like right there with me the whole time. But if you've got your dog in cargo and you're doing a transatlantic or transpacific flight, how do you make sure that all that stuff gets taken care of?
So that's a really good question. So if your dog is traveling in cargo, you actually do not want to feed them for 4 hours before, because digestive issues can be a problem. And so a big thing is you want to prep your dog the day of for international travel, being, making sure they get lots of exercise. With regards to the food, typically, as I mentioned, so I'm actually a certified canine nutritionist as well. I typically will bring over a freeze-dried raw, because that is the next best thing to fresh food, with me for the first day of travel. So that's what I plan to do with us going over to Lisbon. And then what I've done is, reached out to there are local gently cooked delivery. I really love gently cooked food. But if you were traveling and you're mobile and you're wondering and you typically feed fresh, freeze-dried raw is the next best thing that you can feed your dogs.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's really important to have something lined up on the ground for when you get there, right? You don't want to be like coming off of a 10-hour flight and then going, okay, where do I find dog food? So,
Exactly, and that's actually what we're building out with our concierge services is so if someone books for us, we have a guided concierge where we work as kind of like a trusted partner where, you'd be doing the booking or we do all of the booking and logistics, and then, you pay us for the planning and organization, and then, we have third-party providers so we can organize all that for you, your ground transportation, your local food partner, and things like that because it is stressful, all of these moving pieces with moving with your pet.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my dog didn't eat on the flight, but rabbits have to continuously eat hay. And so I was just like, it was kind of ridiculous. I felt a little bit like Beverly Hillbillies on this charter flight, like shoveling hay into my rabbit's travel carrier. And she's sitting there
That's so
chewing
funny.
with hay sticking out of her mouth. And I'm like, we are so class. This is like exactly why, it was crazy. Let's see. Oh,
That's great.
Jane in our community had a question. She has 2 70-pound dogs, which raises a question. If you have more than one pet, sometimes airlines have restrictions on how many you can travel with per person, if I'm remembering this right.
Typically, you can travel well, it's in cabin, you can only travel with 1, pet per person. In cargo, you can typically travel, it varies based on airline. I know Portugal allows, you to come in with 5 animals total, and typically, you can bring up to 3 animals in cargo or as checked baggage. And going back to your what you mentioned before about kind of people feeling like, "Oh my god, my dog's gonna be with luggage." If a it th This is why, again, this is something we work with individuals with, is picking the right airline. The right airlines who are, pet friendly, they do a lot more pet travel than you would think, and they actually have, a temperature controlled, pressurized, area specific for animals. So it's not, as and typically, the teams do love animals and they're very supportive of the process. So it's not as, scary if you kept your pet in advance as you might think.
Right. Yeah, I had heard where did I see this? I think it was Etihad Airlines out of the Emirates that apparently has, like, a
Y
really fantastic, like, pet
Yes,
suite in cargo, and I was like, "That actually I wouldn't mind flying on that," you know?
100%.
Um, yeah, and I know that Lufthansa has, like, a pet hotel in Frankfurt that I've heard
Yeah,
people rave about, so, so that the animals don't have to just, like, sit in their crate while they're waiting for their flights to transfer, so,
yeah.
as you said, it sounds like it's, people have this image of it being very, like, I guess, institutional or, just crates and then your pet, but it's not. They do try to make it a positive experience for them. So how far in advance you had mentioned like 3 to 6 months earlier. Like what's the ideal window for somebody who is, let's say they're looking a year or 2 out for their relocation. How soon should they start thinking about the pet aspect of it?
Yeah, the reason I'll tell you why I say, typically 6 months, as I mentioned. So, with that, giving the example of, if you're moving from a high rabies country to somewhere else, like, for example, if, I was Canada, fortunately for me, because we flew from Thailand to, Canada this summer, and fortunately, Canada doesn't have this restriction. If you were flying to the States because Thailand is a high-risk rabies country on the CDC has a list of high-risk rabies countries, and as a result, you then need to get, a teeter test, which is even if your pets are vaccinated against rabies, they need to be tested for rabies antibodies, and this process can take up to 6 months alone just to get, the testing done. There are all of these, nuances depending on your route and where you're traveling to and from. So, some routes, if your vaccinations are up to date, are relatively easy. For example, like, you could do, a move to Europe if, your pet's up to date with their rabies vaccination, from the States in a month. But would I recommend that? Probably not, because it's, hit or miss. Are there gonna be spots available on your flight? What if, you need to make, an appointment for your health certificate at your vet? So there's all of these moving pieces. So that's why typically, I'd recommend, at minimum 3 months, but ideally 6 months out to make this process as painless as possible.
Yeah, that's a good thing for people to plan because I know some people are like, "Well, if I decide to move, I'll just pick up and go." And I'm like, "That's cool, but if you have pets, you have to build in that extra time." And the other thing is, I don't know if it's this way in Canada, but in the US, only certain veterinarians can sign the paperwork for those international things. Like it's the USDA here. And so like we were fortunate my rabbit's vet was a USDA certified vet, but we had to like bring my dog to that veterinarian instead of our regular one because they couldn't sign the paperwork.
Yes, that's
So,
definitely, yeah, that's the other thing you need to think of, also export requirements, exactly, and same thing as I mentioned in Canada, it's the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. They need a lot of people don't know this, they need to endorse, this certification as well, or you can't leave the country, and actually leaving Thailand as well when we flew back to Canada, a lot of people don't know you actually need to go not only do I need the health certificate saying my pets are fit to fly from the vet, I need to go into the quarantine office in, the Phuket airport and get that endorsed as well and saying we are fit to fly and leave the country, and so it's these little things, and that's why working with the right trusted person can really help, with navigating all these nuances.
absolutely. Yeah, and then there's timing of things on the arrival end too, like, we had to make sure that our flight was going to arrive when the veterinarian's office in the Lisbon airport was open. What is your best advice for people who are kind of on the fence and thinking, "Well, I wanna move, but I've got this pet. Is it gonna be too stressful for my pet?" Like, what do you recommend they do in terms of, like, research or preparation?
Well, I definitely recommend you reach out to us to help with the process. The
Great.
big thing, as I said, is do not leave it in advance. Really start planning
Mhm,
3 to 6 months in advance. We actually put
mhm,
together a free guide, which I think we can link in the show notes.
mhm.
Of just kind of some because a lot of people find this process so overwhelming they just don't even know where to start. And so put together a free ebook just with you know to help people get a sense of, really great tips for traveling with your pets and what typically are required, for traveling with your pets so you can get a sense, and obviously that varies from route to route, but we put in, 10 main countries as examples of what the requirements are. So like I said, planning, as far in advance as possible. The big thing if your pet is going in cargo, make or as tech baggage, making sure that, you do reserve in advance with the airline, because these spots can fill up, and also acclimatizing your pet to the crate with positive reinforcement, and not leaving that to the last minute because you do not want this to be a stressful space for your pet.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah, we will have a link to that in the show notes. The ebook is called Your Ultimate Guide to Globetrotting with Your Pet. And it's an easy read, it's got good information in it. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we haven't covered that you would like
Yeah, well,
listeners to
lastly,
know.
we are offering maybe you can share we're gonna be offering 15% off to your community members, for anyone for our travel planner and concierge services. So you can reach out to us, with any questions that you have. My email is Marisa, Marisa, @pawsabroad.co. So, happy to answer any questions directly because I know how stressful this process can be. And, Casey, can you maybe share that discount code with your audience that they can use that checkout on our website as well?
Yes, great. It's WMTE, stands for We're Moving to Europe, and you can use it even if you're moving somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Thanks so much, Marissa. And I hope you have a successful and smooth flight to Portugal. And
You get in
yeah,
person in there at some point, that'd be
exactly.
great.
Yeah, get the dogs together for a play date or something. That would be
Yeah,
a lot
love
of
that.
fun. Oh, they
That'd
would
be
love
so
it
fun.
too. Oh my gosh. Well, safe travels. Thanks again so much. And we will make sure that your email address and all of the contact information is in the show notes.
Thank you so much, appreciate you having me.
That's all for now. Thank you for listening to We're Moving to Europe, a podcast for Americans who are curious and or serious about relocating to a European country. I'm your host, Casey Kelly. Our producer and editor is Magdalena Laas, and our music was composed by Sage Barton. For more resources and to join the conversation, connect with us on Substack at We're Moving to Europe.